What's going on, guys? It's me again. It's Dan with the Badass Patriot Company, Vice President thereof. Thank you for joining us today in our next installment of the Badass Patriot Company podcast. If you've been tuning in previously, you'll know that we have been discussing the core principles of our company, which are truth, liberty, duty, and hope. Previous installment was duty. I encourage you to click somewhere in the links here, and we'll send you those things. And please give that video a view after you've, of course, liked, subscribed, and watched this one to its completion. On that note, please, again, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe the video. If you're on Rumble, click the Rumble button, hit the like button for us. We prefer you to be on Rumble. That conservative or not, I do believe that Rumble is going to be the alternative to YouTube. I'm going to say the alternative, the new kid, the new sheriff in town, a little wider action. At any rate, last installment of the core principles topic is hope. And frankly, we wanted to end on hope because I think hope is where we want to leave it as we're moving forward together, hopefully. That's the idea. Again, if you're tuning in for this the first time, one of the chief missions of the Badass Patriot Company is to be able to boldly proclaim your opinions without fear of reprisal, whether you're right or left on certain topics. But mostly because I think that even individuals who might consider themselves conservative, center left, sorry, far lefties, quite frankly, I don't quite see where we can get along there. But even then, I do want to talk to you. I do want to talk to you because I think that maybe there's a lot of people out there who consider themselves center left or whatnot, and maybe they're just kind of going along with the narrative, going along with the mainstream sort of things. And if you stopped an individual person who, in any other circumstance, they might say, "Oh, I'm a staunch leftist or I'm firmly on the left," and you talk with them for a second, you probably would find that you actually have more in common with one another. At any rate, so that's the whole point. We want to bring people together. Hopefully, I'm a staunch conservative, not moving from that. Now I'm open to have my mind changed. I just genuinely don't think you can. That said, I'm not afraid to admit if I'm wrong on things, but that's a whole different topic. So anyway, today we're talking about hope. So in the truth, liberty, duty, and hope series of things, we wanted to end on hope because that's honestly the way we feel about America's future is hopeful. Now, if you're like me and you're a conservative, you may take a look around you and think, wow, it's looking pretty bad, guys. It's looking pretty tough. You see, at the recording of this video, we just recently had the shooting in Nashville, and a lot of tension that came up over that. Former President Trump was just indicted in New York. Outside of that, you still have the war raging on in Ukraine and Europe, which is draining a lot of both Europe's resources. America's throwing a huge hunk of money over there. And of course, the blood and treasure of the Ukrainians themselves being spent on the ground over there. You've got just recently a bunch of banks tanked and they're gone. They're not here anymore. And that's been interesting. You had the big train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Things seem like they're going a bit crazy. By the way, at this moment, as of this writing, we started going back to the war in Ukraine thing. We started shipping depleted uranium rounds from Britain into Ukraine for them to use. And it's a little wiggly as to whether or not the Russians are going to consider that nuclear arms. And so the Russians have started staging nuclear missiles or nuclear arms to some degree in Belarus, which is just north of Ukraine, if you're not familiar with it. So we're playing chicken with nuclear war, it would seem, in Europe, which is needless to say, probably not a good thing. So it's kind of hard to be hopeful about not only America's future, but the future of the globe. Nevertheless, I would say there is hope. And allow me to explain. So, and apologies, this might be the first time that some of the videos that we place might cut to dead air. And if you're on YouTube, I'll have to cut some of this stuff out because I just don't think it's going to play there. But if you would, please join us on Rumble where you can catch the fully uncensored version of the episode. So I think there's actually a lot of hope for America on the future. I'm definitely in that white pill camp. where I believe that there's a lot of hope. I think that the good guys are going to win. In case you're confused, the good guys are you and me, man. Not just conservatives, but I do think that there are a lot of individuals on the left who, when we sit down and talk to them, they're like, hey, maybe we disagree on certain even hot button issues, but we can dial a lot of this stuff back. And quite frankly, it's a little bit of a hot topic, but I'm going to dive into it because it's a great example. As I mentioned at the outset, we just had a shooting in Nashville, Tennessee, where an individual who was a trans man, I won't name them, but this is a person who is female but thinks that they are a man, went into a Christian school and shot the place up, wherein they killed 3 children and 3 adults. And then that person was then shot and killed by responding police officers. So why do I bring that up? Well, there's some crazy tension going on about that, wherein you have mostly conservatives who are saying, hey, this is crazy. This person was clearly mentally ill, which I don't think should be controversial. I may have to blank that out, but they think it was clearly mentally ill. Even if you want to have a debate around the whole transgender setup, if someone's so far gone that they would think, hey, I'm going to bust into a school and shoot children, that's just a whole another level of mentally ill that we can get into. Hopefully that's not a controversial topic. At any rate, so this person was clearly mentally ill, busts in, kills some people. Now we're seeing several activist groups on the side that are doing this thing where they will hold up 7 fingers in protest. This symbolizing the number of victims in that particular incident. Now, there were 3 kids, 3 adults. So I won't hold the middle finger, but who's the 7th person that we're talking about? Who's the 7th person that we're talking about? Well, they're talking about the shooter who was murdered. Now, think about that for a second. If you've got activist groups openly in the United States claiming that a school shooter was on par as a victim with 3 innocent children, it's pretty nuts. That's pretty nuts. Of course, another hot button topic, you've got the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, recently indicted over campaign finance issues or money laundering issues. I don't know how exactly they're going to charge it. It's not clear exactly with what he's being charged at this time. Excuse me. But it's getting a little tense, isn't it? Well, it might stay tense. We'll see. Because these are pretty important issues. People have a lot of hot emotion about it. Nevertheless, consider this. I've always postulated that if you can view America as like a blob, probably be for me backing out, my camera might jump out of focus. If you view America as a blob, right, and you have the left and the right, but generally they've been one unit. And then what has happened is that the left in this country has gone so far left, and this is certainly a minority of individuals, gone so far left and stretched the blob that is the United States consciousness out so far, and it's putting a lot of strain on the middle. The right, for the most part, hasn't gone anywhere, and if you want, we can get into all that. And so what I'm thinking is that what is going to be the thing, and the only thing kind of holding these two pieces together, by the way, are the individuals I talked about earlier, those sort of average Americans who are going about their life. They follow politics just a little bit. They're the kind of guys and gals that they'll get up, they're going to fill up their coffee cup, they're going to go to work, they're on their way to do their job, and they do it diligently. On the way to work, or maybe they flip on the news, they flip on CNN, NPR, Fox News, whatever, they flip on the news just to get updated so that they know what's going on. And quite frankly, I'm not really talking about conservatives, to be honest with you, but a lot of folks on the left kind of flip on the news, flip on CNN, flip on MSNBC maybe, or NPR, because they assume that these are pretty trusted names in news, CNN in particular, but they assume this. They listen to what these guys are telling them, and they're like, well, this is how it is. This is what's going on, because these folks are supposed to be reporters. They're going to tell you what is happening, and that's it. They're not going to have a huge bias. They're just going to tell you what's happening, and that is it. Unfortunately, they don't really do that, but that's a whole separate topic. But these individuals, they get in there, they do their job, they take in the news, they go home. That's it. Okay, so these guys are what's holding the country together. So I'm always curious, when the actual activists left, what are they going to do that's going to finally snap the country apart from a mentality perspective? And unfortunately, there's 2 aspects. The sort of activist or radical left also seems to be in pretty stark control of the Democratic Party more largely. There are a number of individuals who are quite liberal, whom I still follow and listen to this day. I disagree with them on a lot of things, but they don't really consider themselves part of the Democratic Party anymore, because that party, unfortunately, is being controlled by radical activists, a loud minority within their own party. And that's not uncommon to them. That's happened to several parties throughout history. And certainly in the future, the right is not immune to that. And so we should always keep an eye out for the radical elements of our own side of things. But nevertheless, that's what's happening now. So what's going to happen that's going to finally snap the country apart and we're going to really see sides divided? Well, the reason I'm hopeful and I bring all that up, it does sound rather dark, but I think that whenever that snapping moment happens, I think what's going to end up actually happen is the radical left is going to find itself a very small minority detached out of here, and the rest of the unit of the country is just going to come together. You know what I mean? That's what I think. And I think this might, I'm not making a prediction, but this seems like it might be, one of those moments. I do think if you stopped an average person on the street and said, hey, did you hear about the shooting in Nashville? Oh, God, yeah, that's terrible. I was like, well, he's like, what do you think about that? And he's like, wow, man, that person was clearly messed up. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's wild, man. It's kind of tragic when all that stuff happens. And there are a slew of other debates that can be started by that, by the way. But if it gets down to it and you ask them, well, hey, man, do you think that what do you think about the shooter themselves? And it's like, well, the person's clearly mentally unstable. And you're like, well, what do you think about these guys that are saying that they're on par as victims with the children that were shot there? And I'm not discounting the adults who were killed either, by the way, but unfortunately, dead kids is pretty jarring to the psyche. What do you think about that? And I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of nuts. Like, I don't go that far. And I have to think that for the most Americans, and when they see these individuals who are saying, oh yeah, actually this person's on par, they're going to be like, whoa, that's a little, I don't know about all that, fam. And they'll back away from that. And I've even seen that from people who are even staunch leftists on the internet that I keep tabs on. They backed off of that. They're like, oh, well, this person was clearly, had some trouble or whatever. And they're just like trying to calm some things down. But then other people are just trying to ramp it up. So I think that there's a lot of hope there. I think that the radical elements in our country are pushing so hard that they cannot help but detach themselves from the broader American conscience, is basically what I'm driving at. And so I think that there's hope on the horizon for America and her badass patriots in this regard. I think that we are seeing a rebound from some of the craziness that has happened. And our best duty is not only to enjoy this swing back to sanity, but to make sure that we just don't swing too far. That's the critical thing. Because we, as conservatives in particular, it's really simple to say, hey, we can clearly observe the radical left and like, these guys are crazy. I was like, we need to not let these folks be in control of our republic. They're a small minority of individuals. We need to make sure, hey guys, look, you've had your fun. Your ideas are insane. They've been debunked several times over. We're good. We're going to go back, us traditional conservatives and liberals. We're going to go back to debating NAFTA. We're going to go back to saying, we're going to go back to arguing, if we're going to argue about abortion, for example, we're going to argue on whether or not abortion's acceptable within the first trimester. We're all going to come back to where probably most of America is, that, abortion in like the day before the child is due is probably too much. I think a lot of even people who are consider themselves Democrats are on the left, probably, yeah, first trimester, maybe. I don't know how someone is like second trimester is acceptable, but to some degree, we can walk that back. We can debate that. We can get back to that point, and then we can go toe-to-toe on that. We can go toe-to-toe on everything. We can go toe-to-toe on, decency, public decency, whatever. We can get back to it. I think a lot of us are actually a lot closer together ideologically than we think. And I think it's just that we have a radical element at this time in our history on the left that's pulling the country, or pulling especially the Democratic Party, off the cliff to the left. And so if you're out there, you're center left, even slightly left, let's talk. I think that we can come together for now, move the country to a sane and stable position, and then we can then debate. Because as another side of things, I think you're actually seeing a huge populist movement within the United States right now as well. Meaning individuals who think, you know what, whether Democrat or Republican, our politicians seem to have their own interests, their own pocketbooks in their mind, as opposed to the well-being of their constituency, which is largely the case. largely the case, unfortunately. And I think you're seeing that on both. I think you're seeing people recognize that on both the left and the right. People who are traditionally liberal, or even just liberal, period, and individuals on the right. And they're like, hey, look, we need to move away from these establishment politicians. On the right, that's why so many people love Donald Trump. Donald Trump was not an establishment character. And that's despite the fact that Donald Trump donated to the Clintons in the 90s, right? Donald Trump is a 90s Democrat. Like, he was, I think he's the first president ever to be pro-gay marriage at election time, right? Just as an example. He's a 90s Democrat, but that's conservative now, apparently. So just as an example. But anyway, conservative loved him because he was a populist. He seemed to be America first for the people. Now, we can debate about his policy or whatever. That just seemed to be the case. That's what his constituency really felt that. Bottom line. And there are individuals on the left who meet this category as well. As much as I dislike the guy's politics, like his standards, I have to tell you that it looks to me like your Bernie Sanders character, at least prior to the 2016 Democratic primary. Bernie Sanders seemed to be that guy for the left, right? A lot of folks who are on the liberal side of things really liked Bernie Sanders. He's a non-establishment character, even though he's been in government since the dawn of time. Non-establishment character who is just different from your, like on the left, your Clinton dynasties, your all these individuals, right? Say that, but unfortunately, kind of fell from grace in 2016, and then again this last around 2020, I suppose it was. Nevertheless, but there are individuals like that, populists on the left. Another couple of candidates off the top of my head, like your Tulsi Gabbards, your Andrew Yangs. These guys had popularity. Again, I disagree with some of their ideas, right? But I can't ignore the fact that I think they had a better idea about what actual liberals wanted, as opposed to what these like insane radical leftists were driving the Democratic Party to do. If that makes sense. At any rate, that's just a few examples. We can get into all that, but I think there's a lot of hope because ultimately, conservatives and liberals right now, genuine, like you're on the street conservatives and liberals, I think all of us feel that our politicians are more concerned with lining their own pockets as opposed to helping out their constituency. And I think there's power in that. I think there's unity in that. Nothing unites people like mutual hatred of politicians, I suppose. But we can come together on that. Say, hey, look, guys, let's divest these knuckleheads of power, and then we'll sort out exactly how we're going to redo that. Going down the road, let's say, like, I think maybe the federal government's too powerful. Maybe we want to spend some more time and money on our local governments. I would come together with a Democrat or a leftist or someone who's on the left. I can't say a leftist, a liberal on that topic. Hey, you know what? Let's you and me find somebody that can bring power, that's going to bring power back to the state, and then you and I can butt heads on exactly how, say, our state or our community is going to handle policy from that point forward. So anyway, I think there's a lot of hope. Hopefully that's coming across, that making sense. There's a lot of turmoil out there. There's a lot of strife. There's a lot of dark things that are on the horizon, that seem to be on the horizon. But I do think there's a lot of hope. I do think there's an opportunity here for us to come together. And I do think hope is, in fact, on the horizon for America and her badass patriots. And I hope that you do too, pun intended. At any rate, thank you. I have again been Dan with the Badass Patriots Company. Again, please hit the like button, click subscribe, the notification bell, all that good stuff. Please click the like button, the rumble button if you're on there. That's where we would like to have you. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day.